is often the result of an overwhelming amount of stress from a situation that exceeds one's ability to cope, such as the death of a loved one, the end of a meaningful relationship, or the rejection of a loved one. Do you pretend that everything's good when it really isn't? When you don't have a positive and healthy way of dealing with your trauma, you end up repressing your negative emotions. It can be hard to recognize unresolved trauma on the surface, especially within ourselves. So, here are 9 signs you're still suffering from unhealed trauma. 1. You resist positive change. When something good comes into your life, is your first instinct to be suspicious of it? You have an innate feeling of shame or guilt whenever you allow yourself to grow attached to someone or celebrate your own success? If so, you might be carrying unresolved trauma within you. You have a hard time accepting positive change and may even try to resist it at first, because deep down inside, you feel like you don't deserve to be happy. 2. You need to plan for everything. Do you have a need to stay completely in control? Do you feel frustrated and lost whenever things don't go the way you expect? Your need for control is most likely rooted in a traumatic experience that left you feeling helpless and vulnerable. As a result, you micromanage everything and worry about the things that are out of your control. This shows that you have a deep-seated distrust in both yourself and the world in general. 3. You have a strong fear of failure. Being afraid of failure is a normal part of human nature. However, a strong fear of failure can be unhealthy if it starts to outweigh your motivation to succeed. Not only do you miss out on a lot of opportunities and stifle your creativity and ambition because of it, but it can also lead to perfectionism and insecurity. It might be instilled in you by unresolved trauma that causes you to have a negative belief in yourself and internalize your shortcomings. 4. You have a strong fear of success. Alternately, repressed trauma can also manifest through a strong fear of success. Did you ever hold yourself back from getting something you wanted? Not because you feared you might not get it, but because you feared what would happen when you did. You're afraid of losing what you'll have even before you achieve it. The tendency to unconsciously sabotage your own chances of success is often associated with those who were abandoned or lost a loved one at a young age. 5. You have difficulty concentrating. Trauma has a lot of damaging psychological effects, and it's not uncommon for victims to suddenly have difficulty concentrating. If you've been having gaps in your memory, blacking out often, and finding it hard to keep your train of thought, it might be your mind crying out to you for help, asking you to work through your trauma. 6. You have trouble asking for help. Do you have trouble opening up to others about what happened to you? If you've experienced some form of abuse or mistreatment, you usually struggle with asking for help. You'd rather suffer in silence because you're too afraid to reach out to someone else. You don't want to be rejected, denied, judged, or seen as weak by those around you. 7. You often hurt yourself or others. Do you lash out at other people when you're experiencing intense emotions? You push your loved ones away and isolate yourself whenever you have to deal with a problem. If you're still hurting from unhealed trauma, there are times when you might end up taking it out on yourself or those you care about. You become emotionally volatile, out of control, and overly sensitive. You lose your temper, break things, and may even resort to self-harm. 8. You struggle with low self-esteem. There are a lot of ways trauma can skew your self-image, especially if it's rooted in your early childhood experiences. Abuse, abandonment, and neglect can all lead you to question your own self-worth. You struggle to feel good about yourself if the abuse was inflicted upon you by someone you love. Studies have shown that patients with PTSD often suffer from low self-esteem and feelings of worthlessness. And 9. You have unexplained psychological symptoms. Do you feel more anxious and panicky than before? Do you find it hard to feel happy or find pleasure from the things you used to enjoy? Have you lost your appetite or have trouble sleeping well at night? According to research, what is trauma? According to the American Psychological Association, APA, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event. It's something that can take over anyone who's been through an emotionally disturbing or life-threatening experience. Despite what many people think, trauma isn't something that only people who've been diagnosed with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder can have. Living with trauma can affect you well after a traumatic event or experience and can play a big part in how you move forward in life. There are certain signs and behaviors that are common in most people with trauma. So, to help you become aware of whether you're still struggling with a traumatic event, here are 5 signs you're living with trauma. Number 1. You're still emotionally affected. Does the traumatic event you went through still take a toll on you emotionally, no matter how long ago it may have been? How your trauma continues to affect you depends on your experience, and it can vary from person to person. Certain words in your conversations, being in a certain place, or seeing particular objects may trigger feelings or memories tied to your trauma. In more severe cases, you may find yourself feeling as though you're reliving the incident. These moments can be difficult to manage and end up standing in the way of your healing and recovery. So if you find that you're still emotionally impacted by a traumatic event, seeking help from a mental health professional or even turning to talk to someone who's attentive and sympathetic may help you deal with and navigate through how you feel. Number 2, you avoid certain thoughts, feelings, and conversations. Do you go out of your way to avoid certain thoughts, feelings, and conversations because you don't know how to deal with them? Perhaps you find recalling certain events overwhelming, or you can't bring yourself to talk about a traumatic experience or hear of any similar ones. Avoidance is a natural reaction to trauma and is often used as a method to cope with or escape feelings that may be too overwhelming or exhaustive to address. In the face of what your mind views as dangerous, your flight response may kick in, causing you to steer clear of these unwanted and uncomfortable triggers. However, it's important to know that avoiding your trauma is only a temporary solution to push away your thoughts and feelings at the moment. It doesn't guarantee that they won't pop up again. Instead, avoidance may only prevent you from coming to terms with your trauma, which is important for you to be able to heal and move on. At a more severe level, avoidance can lead to unhealthy and sometimes dangerous coping mechanisms like substance abuse and excessive drinking. Number 3, you feel disconnected from others. Have you been feeling more and more isolated from the people around you? Because of your traumatic experience, it may be difficult to find people who can relate to and understand what you went through. As a result, you might feel disconnected from others, which may make you feel misunderstood, different, or singled out. Sometimes, in order to avoid any unwanted reactions from people who may not understand why you feel the way you do, you may even suppress your emotions and purposefully hide how you feel. However, even if you feel excluded and alone because of what you went through, it's likely that there are people out there who've also been through something similar. According to the National Council for Mental Well-Being, 70% of adults in the US have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. So if you're feeling isolated, it may be helpful to reach out to some communities or groups for support. Number 4, you've become closed off and distant in your relationships. Are you always telling your friends and family that you're fine, even though you're not? Because traumatic events are emotionally and mentally damaging, they can be hard to talk about. Even when others are willing to listen and talk about how you're feeling, it can still be difficult to take them up on their offer. You may fear how they'll react, have trouble putting your feelings into words, or perhaps you just don't want to deal with the painful feeling of thinking back to the incident. However, when you suppress or ignore how you feel, you may just end up isolating yourself from your loved ones. Similarly, the people around you may be unaware of what you're going through and interpret your behavior as annoyance, moodiness, or assume that you're going through a hard time because of other problems. This can also create distance and strain in your relationships, making maintaining close friendships difficult. And number 5, you had negative shifts in personality and thinking. Do you feel like you won't amount to anything in the future? Trauma can also have an impact on your overall personality and ways of thinking, whether it's experiencing a lower sense of self-esteem or developing a more pessimistic or cynical view of the world. Your trauma can change your attitude and sensitivity towards other people. Perhaps you're more on guard when you're around others, or always expect the worst outcomes to occur in every situation. This tendency to always be cautious and suspicious of others, or to become aggressive when you feel threatened, can end up also impacting your ability to form and maintain your relationships. Did you find this video helpful? How many signs did you relate to? Let us know in the comments below. Also be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with those who might benefit from it. And don't forget to hit the notification bell icon to get notified whenever Psych2Go posts. Anxiety, depression, disassociation, depersonalization, panic attacks, frequent flashbacks, nightmares, and emotional distress are all common in patients with PTSD. Have you or someone you love ever experienced a traumatic situation? If so, how do you plan to overcome it? If you're still suffering from any lingering psychological trauma, it's important that you reach out to a mental health care professional today and get the help you need to get better. Healing from trauma takes time and effort, but it's worth it. And it's necessary in order to truly move forward in life and find some peace of mind. Please do share this with those you think might benefit from it. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching.